A, the B, and C. Is the B in this scenario, in the ABC model? The B is the belief, and that's the key. We ultimately have control over our ability to succeed instead of believing that perhaps, well, I'm just not worthy. These things always happen to me. So we can get out of that. Our brains are processing 50,000 thoughts a day. There have been studies that indicate that that's at a minimum. Just think every second and a half, there's a thought that pops into our mind. And we kind of live on automatic pilot where we just, kind of move forward based on what our thoughts tell us to do.
The author of the storytelling series for small businesses and content creators. In Obehi podcast, we talk about the power of your story, your narrative, and why you should own your voice. Whether you are a small business owner, a content entrepreneur, or you simply want to build your influence, storytelling is probably going to be your best instrument to connect with your audience. So join the awakened few who are owning their voices. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Well, Omi, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. I'm really excited about this opportunity, and so I talk about me for a little bit. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and attended public schools there. So I didn't get any private school education. It was public school, and it was good education. I went on to play sports, play basketball at the University of Pennsylvania, which is one of the Ivy League schools in the United States, and one of, I believe, the top 20 universities in the world. Just a tremendous university. If you've heard of Elon Musk, he graduated. The founder of Tesla and SpaceX. Just many people who have gone on to do great things have graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. I played basketball for a Hall of Fame coach named Chuck Daly. And Chuck Daly went on to the NBA and coached the Detroit Pistons. He coached the Dream Team, which was Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and all of these folks. But just a great coach, and I learned a lot from him that helps me to this day. I went on from college and the university to the business world. So I joined a telecom company. It was called AT&T. AT&T is still in existence. And at a very young age, in my early 20s, I supervised construction crews. These are the people that would go underground in manholes to splice cables together. You see them on a bucket truck going up in the air along a cable run or pole line and splice cables and repair cables. And so what was interesting, my first challenge was that I didn't know anything about construction. And yet I was charged with increasing their productivity. So I did a number of different assignments, all in terms of focused on increasing the productivity or turning around an organization. Did that for 12 years, and then moved into the cable TV industry as a young vice president and general manager in my early 30s, and turned around a couple of struggling cable TV systems, moved on to run other cable TV systems, and then was brought back to the telephone company at a very high level. I was still in my 30s, and I was a vice president in charge of changing the culture of a company called Bell Atlantic. And the company is now called Verizon. And in fact, my mentor, um, African American man by the name of Bruce Gordon, named the company Verizon. So we moved on from there to I was a president of a music video channel that was prominent in the United States and in the UK. It was called The Box. And it broke many new acts. It was struggling, and we turned it around and then sold it to MTV. I created a music video channel, not a music video channel, but an actual news channel, which was the first local news channel, cable news channel in Philadelphia, which was then purchased by Comcast, which is a global media company. I moved on to running companies in the internet. I ran a synthetic turf company, was chairman of the board of the Synthetic Turf Industries Trade Association. And then I did some public service work as the deputy treasurer for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as well. But it's through all those experiences that I do what I do today with PowerThinking Corp. In that, what I learned was that people can move from one level to another level of positivity, of productivity, and of collaboration, of finding solutions to problems. You don't have to get rid of people who are not performing and bring in others. You can actually change them and elevate them. And when I came across a company called Reflective Learning that owned intellectual property rights to material that came out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center, all about helping people move from what's called learned helplessness to optimism and positivity, I thought, man, this is where I want to be. And I was able to acquire the company and do what I'm doing today with PowerThinking.
That's fantastic. You have a curriculum that is really outstanding. That is a joy to the community. Thank you
Thank you.
for all what you have been doing.
Thank you. It's a joy to me as well. So I look forward to every week. Today is the day that I put together what I'm going to discuss on Wednesday. So it's always exciting.
That's interesting. I also have participated in some of your event, and really it was interesting. And of course, I think that is when we decided to set up this
Wednesday. Yes.
this event today. Thank you so much for that. We do need more people who are able to be a light, who are able to become reflective of other, so that younger people or those who have not been able to pull out from the rat race, they can look at them and say, "Hey, I can be like him. I can be like him." That is also why we are doing this story. In that we are trying to look at the story of people, so that we want to inspire other people to say, "Hey, I'm like him. Why can't I move out from where I am to become somebody that is better than?" Actually, we are not trying to make people become other people. We want people to be better version of themselves. Yeah,
Yes.
that is the point. All right, now tell me, Stanley, how do you describe what you do today? We see where you are coming from now. We see your trajectory, but looking at what you do today, how do you describe that?
Yeah. Well, it's plain and simple. It is resilience training. So my company, Power Thinking, as I mentioned, we acquired the assets of another company called Reflective Learning, and Reflective Learning um, owned the rights to this material, evidence-based material that helps people to become more resilient. In a word, so I do resilience training. Uh, no matter where you go, I mean, if you watch a lot of sports, and typically in sports, as in life, a team may be down, a person may be losing, or they failed, and then somehow they turn things around and they win the game or win the match. And after the game or match, the coach will say, "Wow, my people were resilient. They bounced back. And we hear it over and over again. In the face of disasters, in Hawaii, a few weeks back, there was this, a down electrical wire sparked a fire that just got totally out of control and destroyed most of Maui, or this one island. And what you would hear is that in the face of all of that, just horrible tragedy, that people were looking forward and they were bouncing back, and they would use the term, they are resilient. But the question becomes, what is resilience? Yeah, we know they bounce back, and most of us, we don't give up. I mean, we eventually get through something, but for some of us, it takes much longer, and there's such wear and tear on our mental state, on our physical state, and the reality is that it doesn't have to take as much wear and tear. We can get through tough times, adversity, faster if we knew the skills that we can practice to do that. So, in what we do with resilience, it's not about just observing and saying, hey, here's some stories about some folks who were resilient, but it's equipping people with evidence-based, research-based skills that can enable them to bounce back from any adversity much faster. And so there is a framework that the average person can use, without the help of a therapist or psychologist. Most folks can actually, if they're if they're not too far down in terms of depression and certain types of thoughts, where you definitely need a specialist. Most people can take advantage of this and can move forward and would not need a specialist, because they have the strength. There are 7 of these inner strengths. There are 7 skills that can be practiced to help one get these strengths, get stronger in these areas, so that when adversity hits, they bounce back faster.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Resilient learning. But how do you learn? What do you have to say about that?
So there are 2 pieces to this learning. Number one is to learn to be more aware. You see, our brains are processing 50,000 thoughts a day. There have been studies that indicate that that's at a minimum. Just think every second and a half, there's a thought that pops into our mind. And we kind of live on automatic pilot, where we just, kind of move forward based on what our thoughts tell us to do. We believe that, these thoughts are accurate. So the first thing is to be aware, number one, that we have all of these thoughts in our head, and then to become more aware of the nature of these thoughts. So of the 50,000 thoughts a day, 70 to 80% of those thoughts are negative. So it takes us time. You can't just present what I do and then say, okay, people have it. They will be more aware. Well, they won't be, because it takes practice to be able to tune in to what's going on in our heads, and to determine if those thoughts are negative and taking us in a bad direction. So the first piece of this learning is about learning to be more aware. And there are like 3 skills that help us with this awareness. And then there's the remaining 4 that are all about taking action. So once we are aware of what's going on, then there are action skills, so that we can, turn a potentially negative situation around into a positive, so that we are not negatively impacted, by those thoughts. So I'll give you an example. If we're driving down the road, an interstate, and a lot of cars, typically what happens is someone's in a rush, and they may get out in front of us and cut us off on the road. And most people would respond with being angry. But then when you analyze that, you break it down, and we call this the skill of ABC, with the A being the adversity, being cut off on the road, B being a belief about the adversity, C being the consequence or the negative emotion. In this case, we feel that somebody violated us, and when we feel somebody violated us, we get angry. So what people miss in that example, what they typically do is go from the adversity being cut off to the C, which is the consequence or the negative emotion. In this case, anger. What they miss and what they fail to realize, and part of this awareness is helping them to be aware of these three elements, the A, the B, and C, is the B in this scenario, in the ABC model. The B is the belief, and that's the key. Being aware that we may have a belief that this person did something to us, when the reality is that they may not have even been thinking of us. Perhaps they were in a rush to get to see a loved one in a hospital who was probably told that they didn't have much longer to live, or they were late for an appointment. They weren't saying, hey, I'm going to cut Stan off in the, on the highway. I'm going to do this to him because I don't like him. Well, wasn't the case at all. So if we can be aware of what's going on with us in our minds, where we hit the adversity and all of a sudden we're angry, if we can be aware of examining that, number one, recognizing that emotion, wow, I just got angry, and then going back to, so what is it about what happened that made me angry? Well, I believe this person was doing something to me. If we change that belief, then we can mitigate or reduce the amount of negative emotion, and in some cases, eliminate it altogether. And this is why different people can respond differently to the same experience, to the same adversity, whether it's a loss of a loved one, it's a loss of a job, it's getting cut off on the road. People respond differently, and it is because of what they believe about what happened to them. So that's just an example of the power of being aware of these thoughts and how we can take control of them, as opposed to having these thoughts drive our actions.
All right. All right. I like that. So we're not going to be running our life in autopilot now. I remember one time, and should be a couple of years ago, I wrote a book that I titled How to Discover Your Life Purpose. Then at the point in that book, I was saying, you're not going to live your life to run in autopilot. If you leave it to run in autopilot, you are going to become a normal, the average life. What is the average life? Well, depending on what is your inclination, for example, if you look at a river, you see the river is flowing naturally, but sometimes you want to cross from one bank of the river to the other, from one side of the river to the other. For the fact that you want to put a bridge, it's not natural. Because if you want it to be natural, you would just follow the normal course of life, no? But you want to do something extraordinary. So you decide to put a bridge that cut from one side of the river to the other, so you can travel easily. That is not natural. But that is how you want to run your life, because you are not running autopilot. You are running you are living intentionally. You are deciding what you want to do intentionally. You see, for the fact that we can fly a jet plane, it's not natural. Because if the way we were designed as entity, we were supposed to fly in the air, we would have been like the birds having wings. But we can see that we don't have wings, but we still want to fly in the air. That is not natural, but that is how we decide to live. We decide that this is how we want it. And I really like that. in that there is a lot of potential possibility around us. But those possibilities are only potential. They cannot manifest until we work on them, we transform them into what we want. So I really want to thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that.
Oh, sure. That was great, what you just shared. We do have to be intentional. We do have to say that we're not going to allow, just because it's the way it's been for 40 years, that's how our thoughts have taken us. Um, we can actually stop it and say, okay, look, I want to be intentional about taking control and moving myself in a different direction, and not simply saying, well, whenever this happens, this is the way I respond. It's always been that way. It will always be that way. I don't understand. I can't see how I can do anything differently.
Yeah,
But we do have to be intentional about wanting first to do something differently and taking the steps to make that happen.
thank you for that. All right. This idea of thinking differently, actually, it's a couple of years ago that I started to read about positive thinking, this self improvement mindset, and it really have changed my life in a large way, giving me a different perspective. Because, like you said, no, the same ray that rain on the good people also rain on the bad people. The same rain that rain on the human being also rain on the ground, rain on the animal. But we can see the effect is not the same. What happened, but what we do about it actually make the difference. Anyway, I don't want to go much on that.
Oh, that's great.
So I don't know if you could help me understand why is it that sometimes we don't spend enough time to reflect on be intentional about our life instead of just be over reactional or reactionary when things happen to us, as if maybe the cause of the action already uh, predetermine what you are going to do, and therefore you do what you think they already think you are going to do, and therefore you do give them the result that they want instead of the result that you want. You see, what I mean is that you are walking on the street, somebody just insult you, that is an action. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? You could say, you could take up your shirt and start fighting. But what if that is their intention to distract you? What is your intention? Why did you leave your house? Because if you fall into their trap, meaning they have succeeded, therefore you have failed. What if you could look, like you were saying, you could say, maybe this person is ignorant, so let me just ignore him. Then you will succeed fulfilling your mission for the day. Then, if their mission was to distract you, they have failed. So I believe we have power. But anyway, what I'm thinking there is, why are we not able to reflect a lot to be able to uh, stay on track to where we want to go, our direction, so that we are not distracted? Help me understand that.
Well, I believe that we're just creatures of habit. That most people just kind of live our lives, just kind of moving through and doing the best that they can, not realizing that they have far more control over outcomes than they realize. That's from the time that we were very young. I mean, we don't get drilled into us enough that we have power and that we can do anything. And the people that actually are intentional and take control and empower themselves, well, that was instilled in them at a very, very early age, unless there's some intervention when they say, you know what, I can go in a different direction. Either they're just raised, they're giving they're given shelter, as young children, and food and so forth, and just told to go to school and get a good education and get a job one day, or like this little 2-year-old. There's a video that went viral a few years ago of a young boy whose parents instilled in him that he was smart, he was blessed, but most importantly, that he could do anything. And so he would walk down the street and, going to to the bus to go to kindergarten. By the time he was that age, he would have his little banana. Banana was almost his size, or it looked like it looked that way, because he was so small. But he was powerful because he would walk down the street saying, "I am smart. I am blessed. I can do anything." And so, with that in mind, as he moved through life and moved through obstacles, what his parents instilled in him would come up automatically. Well, the average person would go, "Well, I don't understand how I can get through this." But he's saying, "I can do anything." I had a person that called me the other day who was an insurance agent, and he uh, was stuck because he totaled his car, crashed it, and the company only gave him a small amount of money. And he thought, "I'm in trouble. I don't have any money. I'm only given a small amount of money, and there's no car that I can acquire, that at this small amount of money." Fortunately, he did one of the things that most people don't do. He reached out for help, and he called me, and he presented a situation, and we took 30 minutes and actually walked through how he could actually get not only a vehicle, but one that would perform very, very well at the price that he wanted or lower. So the reality is that most people, are not equipped with the mental beliefs, the mental skills to be able to get them through. And so they need help. That is the reality. No matter where you are in the planet, most people need help. But unfortunately, they don't realize it. They just think that whatever condition they're in, and that's the way it's just going to be.
Thank you for that. All right, now you help people to sort of straighten out their life so they can get a better result because you're helping them to learn. And learning is one of the best things that we can do. Of course, it is a natural thing that we should learn and, of course, improve what we have learned. Now, how do you harness the incredible power of thinking to bounce back? Because sometimes our life is not always on an easy queue all along. Sometimes we hit bottom at some point. Sometimes we hit road, we hit a blockage on the road. Sometimes we have setbacks, serious ones. What do we do at that point? So help me understand that, how you help people to be able to harness the incredible power of thinking their way back.
Sure. So remember, we have these 50,000 thoughts a day, and our goal is to help them to get in touch with it, help them to understand what's going on when they're facing that adversity. The reality of life is that most people think that, well, life should be just smooth. I mean, that's what we all wish. We have our goal, or we may not have a goal, but we just want to get through every day and it be a good day. That rarely happens. I don't know if there's anybody on a planet that can go through every day of their life and not have a bump, and not have a setback, not face adversity. Sometimes minor adversities, like maybe a disagreement or an argument with a significant other or a colleague or a friend, a family member. And sometimes major adversities, where we lose a loved one or lose a job that we've been working for 25 years, and we rose to a high position and made a lot of money and high salary. But what we have to realize is that there are inner strengths that we can draw upon to get us through those tough times. And they're based on decades and decades of research. And what I love about this framework of these, identifying that psychologists discovered, these inner strengths, is that they're common sense, really. People come up with all kinds of terms and strategies and so forth. But what I like about the framework that was developed by the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center is that they're easy to understand. They're common sense. We all know what they are, And yet, there are books written about, different strategies, new terms, a growth mindset, there's the limited and fixed mindset. There's all kinds of things. There's flow. There's a term called perma. Here's what it amounts to: 7 uh, common sense inner strengths. So if you're resilient, you're going to have, one of these or multiple at a very high level on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 is, you're just really, really bad, to 10, where you are super strong in these areas. And the first, think about this, common sense. To get through the adversity, we have to be in control of our emotions. And most of those are negative emotions. So it's emotion regulation, that ability when faced with adversity to stay calm and not get out of control. The second is impulse control. That is the ability not to say or do the first thing that comes to mind. Many people get in trouble because of poor impulse control. The combination of a lack of emotion regulation, where they're getting really angry or getting excessively sad, and they can't control that emotion. And then next, usually goes hand in hand, is that impulse control, the ability not to say or do the first thing that comes to mind. In the case of crimes that are committed, someone gets angry, they have a weapon. The first thing they think about is that I'm going to get this person back because they violated me verbally or whatever the case, and they strike back, and now they have to pay by being incarcerated or in prison for the rest of their lives, or even worse. Those are two that if as a human race, if we can get stronger in those areas collectively or all over the planet, life would be much better. We can probably reduce the amount of war, crime, if we can, in just those two inner strengths, bounce back when we're angry and we tend to say something or do something that we regret. Next is empathy, the ability to understand another person's experiences and emotions and not get caught up in our own. The next is what's called self-efficacy. That is the belief that we ultimately have control over our ability to succeed, instead of believing that perhaps, well, I'm just not worthy. These things always happen to me. So we can get out of that. Then there is optimism. And that is this view, always very difficult to do, that no matter what goes on, there's going to be a successful outcome. Be optimistic that no matter what's happening in my life right now, we're going to get through this. And you hear this when folks go through natural disasters, and there's plenty of them with climate change around the world. And they'll interview people, and some will say, you know what, I'm still alive, and we're going to get through this. They're optimistic. Next is causal analysis, and that is this systematic way of drilling down to the root cause of a situation or problem. And then finally, the 7th inner strength. And this is all you need. If you have these 7, you'll get through anything. And that's reaching out. I just gave an example of a person who reached out to me that had a car crash, and they received just a small amount of money for their car, and were wondering how they were going to make it and how they were going to get another vehicle that could function. And but this person, instead of being depressed about it for a long period of time, called me. I answered the phone, and we worked through it. So those are those inner strengths that we can actually build. And I'm just excited that each and every week on Wednesdays, what we call Power Thinking Wednesdays, 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m., and then 9:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, we're able to help people with those.
Thank you so much for that. All right. How can people connect with you, those who want to work with you and to learn more about what you do? Please share with them.
Sure, they can just go on LinkedIn. They can just put in my name, Stanley Greene, Greene, and then message me. Connect with me, follow me, message me, and I can get back. Or they can email me at Stan, STAN, at PowerThinking Corp. It's PowerThinking, CORP.com. Or go to my website, PowerThinkingCorp.com, and become a member of PowerThinking. We have many members from all over the United States and different parts of the world, and we look forward to doing what we can do to help other people move forward.
What would be your final thought here to close the conversation in 60 seconds?
The final thought is that, each and every one of us has power. And this is what I found in my experiences, walk through life as a youngster, where my mother had setbacks and nervous breakdowns and was able to get through it with college, with athletics, and then in the business world and with my family, that each of us has the power to get through whatever life throws at us. And we invite you all to be part of Power Thinking. Join our calls so that you can tap into your own power and overcome any adversity.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. It'll be really, really powerful here. It's power thinking. This really has been powerful. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, Abahi. Thank you for inviting me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Overheat Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next episode.